Deputy Cullinane, over to you.
I have two themes, Cathaoirleach, so can you remind me after 5 minutes,
yeah,
so I don't lose the opportunity of the second one. And I want to start with Mr Barrett. You have presented this committee with a lot of notes, memos and records of your version of meetings that would have taken place. Is that something that you would have always done professionally?
Yeah, well, historically, yes. Less so because of the sheer volume of meetings. I find myself going from meeting to meeting. But to be honest, when this issue first arose, it was clear to me that this was something of substance. When it became clear it had a historical lineage that wasn't dealt with, I took it particularly seriously and documented it as I went.
And would they be contemporaneous?
Yes.
So
I have them sitting on a laptop. I can give you the hard drive, which will have them dated.
So the letter that was dated the 1st of October 2015, which is the meeting with the Commissioner, Assistant Commissioner Toomey and the CAO and potentially others, when was that written?
This is the meeting of the 27th of July?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the handwritten notes of that were done within 24 hours of it.
But when did you actually? We got a letter. There was the memo that you gave of that meeting. This was where you said that the meeting started at 5:27 and went on for about 2.5 hours.
Yeah, that would have been done shortly thereafter. I couldn't give
when
you
exactly. How long after the meeting were the notes done?
Well, what I did was because of the nature of the meeting, and as I explained earlier, it arose out of. And that was a meeting I didn't realise I was going to till I was invited just before it began.
I do understand that. We have 10 minutes, Mr. Barrett. So
I don't precisely know, but if I can find it in my file, I'll give it to you. What
I want from you is when the date the meeting took place and the date that you actually inputted the information to do a memo or a report.
I'll provide that date to you. It's in a laptop, and I can date it from the hard drive.
And tell me then, you did a meeting with Mr. Howard on Thursday, the 2nd of June. Was that 2015?
Yes.
Was it?
Yeah.
2016.
My apologies.
Yes.
Yeah, Howard.
And you did a memo to that. So, what date did that meeting take place?
Okay, so there's two really important timelines around that. I wrote a note of it after Mr. Howard left my office, which was about 6:30 or 7 o'clock on the 2nd. I put it into the format that it's in on the 22nd or thereabouts of July. I think it's dated 22 July.
And how long after the meeting with Mr. Howard?
7 weeks, and that's particularly important because in that period of time, quite frankly, as Mr. Howard explained himself, I had expected that there would be a follow-up meeting, at a minimum a follow-up telephone conversation. My concern was that there wasn't, and that there was very important items that at that point I had in effect unburdened myself of.
Just through the chair, can I put it then that if the note was done 7 weeks after the meeting took place, and it was done with a frame of mind that Mr. Barrett was concerned that Mr. Howard had not got back to him, and the tone of the memo seems to suggest that you were a bit concerned about whether Mr. Howard was going to follow up on this or not, would that have influenced then how you would have wrote what you wrote?
To some degree, but to be fair to Mr. Howard, and he's made the point quite articulately this morning, the gap has a legitimacy that I've accepted subsequently. But when I did write it, my concern was to ensure that there was a documented record clearly dealing with the meeting on the 2nd and events that happened subsequently. So it captures both.
But what I'm saying is that when you write something 7 weeks later and you're doing it from the frame of mind that you are concerned, it can influence then what you
No question. I would agree with that.
Okay.
I would agree
so you
with
then
that.
say that you saw Mr. Howard. You say Mr. Howard advised you of his deep respect for the Garda organisation and of his close personal relationship with the Commissioner. He advised you of his instinct as a lifelong servant to avoid matters that could give rise to embarrassment and controversy.
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
Well, I think Mr. Howard has an instinctive eye for what is the need for good governance and order, and I would respect the man's experience, 9 years Sec-Gen of Defence. So, in fairness, he called this out to me. I'm not making that up.
What did he mean by give rise to embarrassment and controversy?
Well, you can ask the man himself. I took a note of this.
Mr. Howard you wrote it. I
wrote it. I understood that this would be the last kind of thing that he would like to have to deal with, but that he was willing to.
Did you get an impression when you wrote this? Had you an impression then that he was reluctant to deal with it?
I wouldn't say reluctant. I'd say disappointed at having to.
Because you go on after you say then that, because it suggests to me that his instinct as a lifelong civil servant was to avoid matters that could give rise to embarrassment, could suggest that let's not really rock any boat here, let's not deal with this. You then go on to say that he would come back to you, but he did not.
Yeah.
He subsequently had a meeting with the Commissioner, and then he went on to say that previous meetings with Commissioners actually resulted in information not going to the CNAG's office. All of that suggests that you were a bit suspicious of Mr Howard's motive.
I was concerned, and I reconciled myself with the man himself, so you can address the questions to both of us.
And I'll put it to Mr Howard now. So when Mr Barrett then said that he advised you of he was advised by you of your instinct as a lifelong civil servant to avoid matters that could give rise to embarrassment and controversy, would you have put it like that?
Possibly neither of us would have put it like that if we had foreseen that it would be arising in this context. I mean, I was just being very candid with John at the time, and saying that is what I am. I am a lifelong civil servant.
Deal with the issue of embarrassment and controversy.
Yeah, I found it, can I be very honest, Deputy, just to go to the end of it? I have found this an extremely demanding and difficult thing personally to do. Okay? And I will put it as honestly as that. When I took on the chairing of the Audit Committee, and I say this in no critical way, it was suggested to me it's just something you come along and you'll chair 4 or 6 meetings a year. For the first part of it, it was busy and there was a lot of work done. Then this detonated, and I was simply being very honest and saying, yes, this is very difficult, even today, and I absolutely respect.
What do you mean by difficult?
I would find today a very stressful experience. I would find public speaking difficult. I find absolutely no pleasure in being embroiled in a controversy.
And that then would concern me somewhat, because it isn't about how somebody will feel at a given time. But just hold on, Mr.
Okay.
If you take up a position as head of Internal Audit Committee,
yes,
you should know that you have a responsibility that if wrongdoing happens, you are going to have to confront it.
Yes.
If you are someone that would be uncomfortable when those situations arise, I would suggest that person should not be in that role, because you have to be able, you have to have steel, and you have to be able to say, even though I might have a friendship, even though I might know these people, I have to do the right thing. What I'm reading from you is that made you uncomfortable.
Now, can I be very clear? I was just being honest about how I feel, but I asked to be judged on what I did. Bear in mind, and John did not know this, I had already spoken to the CNAG before he had written the note. Now, I accept the fact, and it would be better probably if I had spoken to him and told that, but I do have to...
Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Howard.
Yeah, I do have to make it very clear to the committee, if I have a public duty to perform, I will perform it. I was just being honest on the personal level. Some public duties are more pleasant than others.
Well, just a final point on this team before I get to the second one. What I'm saying is that, to be fair to us, when reading the note from Mr. Barrett, it does seem to suggest that what Mr. Howard was saying is that I'm around a long time as a lifelong civil servant. I know the Commissioner, I have a close relationship with her. I don't want to do anything, and nor do I believe we should do anything that could cause embarrassment or could cause difficulty for the organisation, and that this then feeds into this pattern of let's keep this internal, let's keep this outside the purview of others. Now, that's not what you're saying here, but I'm saying it's difficult to take anything other than that from the note.
Well, if I can just bring everybody's attention to page 641 at the end, and I said, I'm committed to you, I will be completely forthright about matters in all areas. I vested my trust, quite frankly, in Mr. Howard. I was doing so at that meeting on the 2nd. I did expect that he would return to me, but you know what? In the circumstances, when I sought advice on this, Deputy, one of the things that emerged was, he's the statutory office holder. Don't sweat it, right? And in fairness, as I learned subsequently, he acted his part completely with honour.
What I've just put on the record is that Mr. Barrett, certainly you did feel when you wrote that 7 weeks later, which should be noted as well,
yes,
that you wrote it from a point of view of being concerned.
I was concerned
whether Mr. Howard would actually follow through or not. I'm not suggesting you did not follow through, Mr. Howard. I'm just saying when Mr. Barrett wrote that memo, that was his frame of mind.
My frame of mind was based on the fact that I had anticipated that there would be a follow-through on the idea that there would be subsequent meetings.
I want to move on to my second team, because I know that Cathaoirleach is going to be tight on time.
Just very quickly, just going back to the start of your questioning, at certain points during July, Mr. Barrett spoke to me both in person and on the phone, And I can confirm, certainly on the 29th of July 15 and the 31st, he informed me about the meeting in the college and its duration and broadly what was discussed, and I'll make those notes.
Okay, thank you for that. So just want to come to Mr. Kelly again, I talked to you earlier about your opening statement and subsequently your views on how you felt frustrated in your work, and you use words like interference, non-cooperation, withholding information from internal audit. You gave examples of how all of that happened. You also broke it down into time periods. So what was the first time period again?
2008 to 2011.
2008 to 2011 was when you felt there was a real sense from you that you weren't getting cooperation.
Yes.
Were you aware of the extent of the irregularities, the extent of the problem then?
No, I wasn't.
But you were certainly very concerned that you weren't able to do your job.
I wasn't getting information, yeah.
And how frustrated were you?
Well, I got to the stage of, in my, and I've discussed this at the last meeting, in my report to the accounting officer, the commissioner, at the end of, for the year 2010, I had a paragraph in about the college, and then I deleted that paragraph on the basis of a report that came back to me from the commissioner with a report from Mr. Cullinane attached.
And that's what I'm trying to get to,
yes.
Mr. Kelly, because I'm trying to reconcile your frustration and your sense of anger that you weren't able to do your job, that, to use your own words, the interference, non-cooperation and withholding of information. I'm trying to reconcile that with your decision then, which is on page 14 of the report. On the 4th of March 2011, the head of internal audit received a note from the Chief Administration Officer, Mark Durgent. There was a note from the Commissioner, and then you removed a vital paragraph. The vital paragraph that you removed was the paragraph that talked about giving assurances in relation to financial controls. Before you answered, can I put it to you, by removing that paragraph was a dereliction of your duty? Because by virtue of removing the paragraph, you felt at the time when you wrote that paragraph that you were not in a position to have confidence in the financial controls. And yet you removed the paragraph, which then gives the perception to us there is no problem, and you had confidence in the assurances. Can you understand how difficult that is for me to reconcile that with your earlier testimony that you were frustrated, information was being withheld?
My opening statement is written with the knowledge I know today. Back in 2010, 2011, I hadn't that level of knowledge. I didn't perceive that there was that people would deliberately block me. When I brought it to the highest level in the organisation... Mr.
Kelly, that's not what you told us. With respect, you told us that from 2009 onwards you were seeking information. In 2010 you were seeking information. This is 2011. We're 2 years on. You were walking us through your frustration, the lack of cooperation and all of that. And then when it came to the crunch, possibly because of a note, a handwritten note from the Commissioner, you backed off. Did you back off?
Did I back off? I deleted that paragraph. At the last meeting I said...
Did you back off, Mr.
That was a mistake.
It was more than a mistake.
It was a mistake. Did I back off? I didn't intend to back off. I thought I'd brought it to the highest level.
On reflection now, would you say that you backed off?
On reflection now, I wouldn't have done it now, today or this year, if with the knowledge that I have of how the organisation works. I didn't have that level of knowledge back in 2011.
Well, what about your knowledge then of how the Controller and Auditor General's office works? Would you have been knowledgeable about that during this time period?
I would, yes.
You would, yes. So in 2009, when you first became aware of the existence of the 2008 report, did you inform the CNAG?
I'm just trying to think back into my brain.
Well, while you're thinking, can I ask the CNAG's office, did Mr. Kelly in 2009 alert your office to any problem?
We have no record.
You have no record.
Any
I didn't alert
notification.
them.
You didn't alert them. So in 2010, did you alert the CNAG's office?
No, I didn't.
In 2011, when you removed that vital paragraph, and this was a paragraph that says, I can give no assurance that the financial controllers, which is the identical paragraph that actually causes us all the concern here in terms of the 2016 interim audit report. Did you alert the CNAG's office?
No, because I was convinced at that stage that the issues were being resolved.
That's not good enough, but you had a responsibility. During all that time period, would you have been engaging with the Office of the Controller and Auditor General in the course of your work?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy, I asked you at the last sitting when we discussed these issues when you should have been first informed of all these issues. You said probably 2006, but most definitely in 2008. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that
would you have expected Mr. Kelly in 2009 or 2010 or 2011 to have at least informed your office of his concerns?
I would have expected that.
You would have expected.
Yes.
You would have expected
significant matters of that nature that were in his knowledge. I would have expected that at some level it would have been communicated to us.
And given that now, Mr. Kelly, does that not make you uncomfortable?
It does. It does.
Does that make you fit to continue on with your role as head of internal audit, to continue with this audit, given that there's more work to be done? Are you the person best placed to do
Deputy,
that?
I'm going to. That's quite personal.
No, it's in his role.
Yeah.
No,
And I have the. If you want me to take out the Garda Act, I can take out the 2010 Garda Act, which talks about the responsibilities here. This is in relation to policies, processes, and procedures, and someone's role, not their personality. It's whether or not, given the history here, are they the best people to continue doing the internal audit? I'm only asking him for his opinion. He can give whatever answer he wants. I'm asking his opinion.
I want you to be careful, because the last day here at another committee, some other member asked another person, did they think
I'm asking about his own opinion of himself, not a third party, not anybody else.
It might be for others to decide, but be careful with your answer.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the McGee report in 2011. I hadn't got that.
You had a summary of it.
I had a summary of it, and I had assurances from the accounting officer and the financial director. I wasn't aware of it. I have said in this committee that was a mistake, and I've learned from that mistake. I think I'm in a better position than I was in 2011. Continue in my role and to.
But you accept, Mr. Kelly, that the CNAG is of the view that you should have informed him at some point between 2009 and 2011, and you did not.
In March 2011, I resolved it in my own brain, right? There was issues. I wasn't getting information. I brought it to the highest level. I got a response back from the Commissioner, from the Deputy Commissioner, from the Executive Director of Finance. At that stage, I was of the opinion that these issues were being thoroughly followed up.
Can you at least here today acknowledge, I have one more question before I get to that question, can you at least acknowledge that you made a mistake and you failed in relation to not informing the CNAG and removing that paragraph? Can you concede that?
I've already conceded that in the last meeting.
And you're conceding it again today?
Well,
and also not informing the CNAG, would you concede that's a mistake?
I had, in my own brain, I had resolved the issue. Therefore, I didn't think there was an issue at that stage to report to the CNAG.
And tell me, and just my last question is, because I've put the questions to you about who should have informed the CNAG. Mr. Cullinane, you had the 2008 report.
Yes.
Why did you not alert the CNAG?
Well, I report to the Chief Administrative Officer, and I recommended in my minute of 2008 that he should report to the CNAG. No, it didn't happen.
And then from all of that time period, from 2008 to 2015, with all of the reports that you would have had, did you ever at any point alert the Controller and Auditor General's office?
No, I didn't.
No, you did not. Nobody did. And then who then in the organisation, Mr. McCarthy, actually has responsibility for informing you? Does the buck stop with the Commissioner, with the Accounting Officer?
Yes, the primary responsibility for informing me rests with the Accounting Officer.
So is it your view as the Controller and Auditor General that former commissioners, who obviously would have been aware and were made aware of reports, failed in their duty to inform your office of these matters? Would that be your opinion?
What I will say is that previous accounting officers did not inform my office of it. I don't want to engage in judgments. I think it is the nature of the kind of thing that should have been disclosed to me.
Yeah,
and it was not.
And with respect, I wasn't asking for your judgment. What I'm asking is, had they a duty to inform your office?
I would consider so.
Okay.
And I might just say, in fairness to witnesses that are here today, that the obligation is on the accounting officer. Any engagement we have with an official representing the accounting officer is doing so on behalf of the accounting officer. So I think it's not a personal failure, I would say, of individuals. It's a failure of a system of communicating with my office in relation to the audit.
But I would imagine, in terms of best practice, you would expect internal audit, when they're aware of these type of issues, that they would at the very least inform your office. You've already conceded that.
I would expect that if the system is working, issues of significance are considered by internal audit, that they would be investigated by internal audit, that the audit committee would have sight of them, and that I would be aware of programmes of work that they are undertaking in relation to those matters.
Deputy Kelly, but just for information for the public, explain how the interaction between you and the Garda Síochána, when it comes to your end, who is the point of contact from your office, the principal contact, and who, at what level in the Garda? Because I'm sure it's not you and the Commissioner sit down to go through the accounts.
No.
So you might explain.
Not. Yeah. Okay.
Who's who? It might be internal audit, but I'm sure there's other people other than internal audit. Who's your main line?
Well, on my side, the audit would be led by a senior auditor, who would be the principal contact with An Garda Síochána. Within An Garda Síochána, there would be regular contact with the head of internal audit, but also with an individual within Mr. Culline's unit, the finance unit.
Okay,
it's the finance officer.
Can I just ask, but many organisations don't have internal audit problems to the extent to this. So the internal audit function doesn't present the appropriation account to you?
Oh, no, it doesn't.
So tell us who's, when you go in to do an audit, it's not the internal audit presents that?
No, it would be the finance unit.
At what level in the finance unit?
Depending on the scale of the organisation and the number of... in An Garda Síochána, it would be generally the finance officer, but there would be contacts with the executive director of finance as well.
Right, so it's
and representations from the
finance
executive director.
Department is the principal line in relation to auditing the appropriation account, and of course you have contact with the internal audit function.
Yes.
Of course as well, but the principal line of contact would be with the finance section of the organisation for whom you're carrying out the audit.
And with the audit committee.